Throughout history, there's always been the bad guys. The ones you will see and hear about in this new show are the ones that are guilty of some of the world's worst crimes. Crimes against humanity, kidnapping, attempted kidnapping, murder, war crimes, and economic assassination, to name a few. These criminals have never been prosecuted or even brought to trial. You have seen them in the political spotlight as well as in international business circles. They have shaped the world you see. They have fed off of and or created the tragedies that you've only read about, if not experienced. Their reason isn't about money. It's about power and control with no regards to human life. To them, their end justifies their means. These are the bad guys. Henry A. Kissinger was born Hans Alfred Kissinger in Germany, May 27, 1923. His father, Louis Kissinger, was a school teacher. His mother, Paula Stern Kissinger, was a homemaker. Kissinger had a younger brother, Walter Kissinger. In 1938, fleeing Nazi persecution, his family moved to New York. After high school, he studied accounting at City College in New York. In 1943, he was drafted into the United States Army. He went through basic training at Camp Croft in Spartanburg, South Carolina, was naturalized, and sent to study engineering at Lafayette College, Pennsylvania. The engineering program was later canceled, and Kissinger was reassigned to the 84th Infantry Division, where he met fellow immigrant Fritz Kramer, who arranged for him to be assigned to military intelligence. In 1944, he went to Germany in the Counterintelligence Corps. After his service, he went to Harvard, where he received his bachelor's, master's, and PhD. In his writings while in Harvard, he expressed interest in Otto von Bismarck, who gained a reputation as a royalist and reactionary politician with a gift for stinging rhetoric. He openly advocated the idea that the monarch had a divine right to rule. His work brought him to the attention of Nelson Rockefeller. He began working with the Rockefeller Group. Kissinger later became the advisor to Nelson Rockefeller, the governor of New York, who sought the Republican nomination for the presidency in 1960, 1964, and 1968. In 1968, Kissinger had become an advisor to the Johnson administration after visiting Vietnam 3 times. He had also become involved in the peace talks in Paris. He shared this information with Richard Nixon, who was running against Herbert Humphrey in the presidential election. He told him that the Johnson administration was close to an agreement with the North Vietnamese, which was being kept secret from the South until it was finalized. At the end of October, Kissinger called to tell the Nixon campaign that there had been a breakthrough in the peace talks. The bombing of North Vietnam stopped, and the final talks were to begin, which gave Humphrey a last-minute surge in the polls. A few days before the election, President Thieu of South Vietnam refused to join the negotiation as advised by the Nixon people, who said, "Hold on, we're going to win."
These people are proceeding on the assumption that folks close to you tell them to do nothing till January the 20th.
You got it.
Now, we think...
I know who they're talking about, too. Is it John Tower?
Well, he's one of several. Ms. Chenault is very much in there.
Well, she's very close to John.
And the embassy is telling the president, and the president is acting on this advice. He started doing it back about the 18th, following our talk on the conversation on the 16th.
The peace talks collapsed and Nixon went on to win. Nixon wasted no time making Kissinger a national security advisor and later Secretary of State. Less than a month after Nixon took office, him and Kissinger drew up plans to bomb North Vietnam sanctuaries in neutral Cambodia, which was against the U.S. Constitution because the bombing of Cambodia was an act of war which needed approval by the U.S. Congress. Kissinger also approved a plan to conceal bombing missions from military records. Under Kissinger's supervision, pilots flew over 3,600 secret missions over Cambodia, dropping 110,000 tons of bombs. The bombing was soon picked up by the press, and Kissinger admittedly got the FBI to use wiretaps to find the leak. He wiretapped his staff as well as reporters. He began meeting secretly with the North Vietnamese negotiator Lao Duc Tho, which were kept secret from the U.S. government. Even the Secretary of Defense didn't know anything about the meetings. Meanwhile, Prince Sihanouk was soon toppled by a CIA-sponsored coup in Cambodia. Kissinger denied CIA involvement in the coup. Kissinger threw support to coup leader Long Nol, who attacked the North Vietnamese immediately. Kissinger implemented the decision to invade Cambodia, which drew resignations from the members of the NSC staff. In 1973, Kissinger was jointly awarded with Lao Duc Tho the Nobel Peace Prize for ending the war in Vietnam. Lao Duc Tho refused the award because there was no peace in Vietnam. The war continued. The U.S. also continued to bomb Cambodia, which illegally was directed by Kissinger. A few years earlier, major corporations were worried about Salvador Allende, who was running for president of Chile, nationalizing their copper industry and conveyed their concerns to Nixon. Allende won. During the period Allende was waiting to be confirmed by the Chilean Congress, in a meeting with Nixon, Kissinger said, "I don't see why we should stand by and watch a country go communist due to the irresponsibility of its people." In another meeting between Nixon, Kissinger, and the CIA director Helms, they wanted to come up with a plan so Allende would not come to power. In an internal CIA memo, it outlined Project Fu Belt, Track 2, the code name for secret CIA operations that were intended to undermine Salvador Allende's government and promote a military coup in Chile. This was directly under the supervision of Kissinger and kept concealed from the State Department and Defense, as well as the Embassy of Chile. Chile's General Snyder, a strong believer in their constitution, was a barrier for any type of military coup. Washington wanted him removed. The money was gathered and handled through CIA channels for weapons, tear gas, grenades, ammo, and payoffs. Kissinger later received word that Track 2 plotters had failed an attempted kidnapping of General Snyder. In a meeting with the CIA, he expressed concern if Track 2 could succeed at this time. The very next day, CIA sent a cable to Chile. It is firm and continuing policy that Allende be overthrown by a coup. It is imperative that these actions be implemented clandestinely and securely so that the United States government in American hand be well hidden. In the end, General Snyder was killed in a kidnapping attempt. The Church Committee was tasked with the investigation, in which the CIA testified that Kissinger was informed of the operation every step of the way and even demanding updates. Allende did take office, but only briefly, as a military coup ended with his killing on September 11, 1973. Augusto Pinochet took power and a reign of terror ensued that would last 17 years. Then came Watergate. Nixon resigned instead of facing impeachment. Some of the articles of impeachment were the concealment of the bombings of Cambodia and Track 2. After Nixon's resignation, which led to the impeachment being dropped, any investigation into the secret bombings in Track 2 were stopped. Kissinger remained Secretary of State under Ford. In 1975, Kissinger and Ford thought it best for Indonesia to annex East Timor. Kissinger and Ford met with the Indonesian President Suharto and gave him the go-ahead for the invasion. The American weapons being sold to Indonesia at the time were for self-defense purposes only. The U.S. provided weapons, helicopters, uniforms, ammunition, food, and logistics. Over 100,000 Timorese were killed in the invasion. Kissinger had long denied discussing the invasion in the meeting with President Suharto. Declassified documents show that during the meeting, Suharto says to President Ford, "I would like to speak to you, Mr. President, about another problem, Timor. We want your understanding if we deem it necessary to take rapid and drastic actions." Ford replies, "We will understand and will not press you on the issue. We understand the problem you have and the intentions you have." Kissinger, "You appreciate the use of U.S.-made arms could create problems. It depends on how we construe it, whether it is in self-defense or as a foreign operation. It is important that whatever you do succeeds quickly. We would be able to influence the reaction in America if whatever happens, happens after we return." While he was on the plane headed back to the U.S. from the trip, the State Department cabled Kissinger twice, saying that the U.S. Congress would cut off military aid and weapons sales to Indonesia because clearly they were using them for offensive purposes. When Kissinger returns, he is angry. Kissinger messages the department, "I want to raise a little bit of hell about the conduct in my absence." On the Timor thing, that will leak in 3 months, and it will come out that Kissinger overruled his pristine bureaucrats and violated the law. How many people in L know about this. Arms sales continued after the short hiatus. In later meetings, one of Kissinger's aides confirms the normal relations with Indonesia had resumed. Not willingly, said Kissinger, illegally and beautifully. Kissinger left office when Jimmy Carter defeated Ford in the 1976 elections, but remained as an advisor for presidents to come. In 1982, Henry Kissinger founded Kissinger Associates, an international consulting firm. Although Kissinger is very secretive about his clients, some have surfaced throughout the years. One of his clients was BNL, an Italian bank whose Atlanta branch featured prominently in the BCCI and the U.S.-Iraq weapons transfer scandals of the 1980s. Democratic Representative Henry Gonzalez of Texas stated the following on the floor of the House: Henry Kissinger was a paid member of the BNL Consulting Board for International Policy. Mr. Kissinger held this position during the height of the biggest banking scandal of its time, $4 billion in unreported loans to Iraq by the Atlanta branch of BNL. Mr. Kissinger resigned from BNL on February 22, 1991, just days before the Justice Department announced a 347-count indictment against BNL. Some of Kissinger Associates' prominent cronies have been Paul Bremer, former Iraq Director of Reconstruction; Nelson Cunningham, manager partner of Kissinger and McCarthy; Richard W. Fisher, president of the Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas; Timothy Geithner, the United States Secretary of Treasury; Jamie Miskett, deputy director for intelligence, Central Intelligence Agency; Bill Richardson, former senior manager director, former U.S. diplomat; J. Stapleton Roy, vice chairman, senior U.S. diplomat; Brent Scowcroft, former United States National Security Advisor. Kissinger has also belonged to the Bohemian Club, Council on Foreign Relations, Trilateral Commission, Aspen Institute, and the Bilderberg Group. He is also an honorary Knight Commander of the Order of the British Empire. In conclusion, Henry Kissinger is guilty by his own admission or by the documentation contained of crimes against humanity, war crimes, conspiracy, attempted kidnapping, murder, breaching his oath of office, treason, and the list goes on and on. Henry Kissinger worked his way into political power and through his contacts built his legacy on the graves of innocent people. No one can even guess the number of dead from his political and business moves. His disregard for life and pursuit of power has earned him a seat at the table of the bad guys.